This is Creative to Creative. Together, we deep dive into the creative and production processes of leading creatives, finding out what makes them tick, how they do what they do, and the challenges along the way. This is Creative to Creative, powered by Motion by Design. With over 15 years' experience in the motion design industry and starting an award-winning studio, Made by Things, in 2015, a motion design and animation studio in Columbus, today Matt works as the creative director at Made by Things and the director of creative mentorship program Make Create Club. Welcome, Matt, to Creative to Creative. Some of what I want to find out is like how things differ over there, but also potentially just some of your insights for people who are, starting an agency or doing things a bit differently. So I've noticed that, for instance, the first thing I noticed was you're a motion designer, similar to me, starting out, and you've ended up running an agency. And for me, it was, I would say, a very accidental process. It just sort of happened overnight. You blink and it happens. And I'm keen to hear the story of how that actually happened for you.
Yeah. So it's funny that you say that. So many people that I talked to early on, I would ask them that question, like, how did you start this up? Like, I'm trying to do that too. So how do I do that? And so many people just said, well, I don't know. It was kind of an accident. I kind of fell into it. Just weird connection, opportunity came up. And I'm like, that's great, but I can't learn anything from that. So I always hated that response. And, so for me, it was like, all right, how do I go about going down this path that I don't know anybody that's intentionally gone down this thing before? And for me, this was, let's see. So I've been running Made by Things now for 8 real years, I'll say. But even before that, it was working freelance nights and weekends and slowly building up a client base for probably 6 years even before that. So over that course of time, so going to my day job, then going home, working at night, it was like, all right, well, what do I do? Like, how do I do this? Like, I knew what I wanted, but I just didn't have that clear path to get there. And I guess, you say that Adelaide's a small town. So I'm from a small town too. I feel like Columbus, Ohio is where I'm at in the US. I feel like it's pretty relatively small, or I don't know. I mean, it's maybe comparable with Adelaide potentially.
I think we need to fact check this. This will be hilarious.
Yeah, let's look up some population reports here.
Yeah, you do Columbus and I'll do Adelaide.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Columbus has, I want to say 2 million. All right, let's see.
My Riverside screen just disappeared. Oh, there we go. So we're 1.3 million.
So
we're living the dream down here.
Columbus is 906,000.
Oh, jeez.
It goes out a little bit further than that. So I think they count it as 2 million, like in the general area, because it just goes out a bit farther. Yeah. But it's growing very quickly. And so for me, I'm from even smaller town in Ohio, like up north, like farm country. And for me growing up as a kid, it was like, this is kind of adding to that story a little bit. For me, it was like, okay, I gotta go. Like if I want to be an artist of any sort that does graphic design, motion design, animation, like I gotta find my way to Los Angeles. That was it. And, Los Angeles from me is not the same distance from Los Angeles to you, but it's pretty far either way. Like it's still 3,000 something miles away, which I don't know if you could use miles or kilometers.
Kilometers. It's a long way. Yeah.
It's either way. Like if you were to drive, it would be like 36 hours or so. Yeah. And I've done that drive 3 times, but so for me, as a kid, it was like, okay, I don't want to work in the same factory that my dad or brother worked in. Like, it's just a town where I didn't feel like I belonged because I didn't want to just accept any of that stuff, like that way of living. So for me, it was like, I need to escape to Los Angeles at some point. And I went to college in Pennsylvania and then worked there for a couple of years after that, and it was like, you know what? I've never even taken a vacation there before. Like, how do I even know I want to live there? So I decided to take a 1-week trip with my wife, well, just girlfriend at the time. And we ended up sort of staying there because I met a few people and basically offered 2 weeks worth of work. So I had to quit my job for the promise of basically just 2 weeks worth of work. And that was probably one of the scariest moments of my life. But so for me, I was like, okay, if I want to learn from the best, if I want to figure out this path, be around these people that I could ask questions to, like, again, even during this time, I was like, yeah, I'm just changing my full-time job, but I'm still going to be working nights and weekends regardless, because I'm still trying to work towards something. And so whenever I went there, I started working at a cool studio there that, doing primarily visual effects work, but I was like trying to work more to the design side of things. And at a certain point, I kind of realized, I'm like, all right, we've worked on like a lot of big brand things. Like, I don't really care anymore about the brands. I care more about the work and doing cool stuff. And in that position that I was in whenever I was there, I didn't have as many opportunities to do really cool stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to leave. I don't want to stay here anymore. My first was just born. I was like, this isn't really the place that I want him to grow up.
Yeah.
So we kind of worked our way back to Ohio. And I was like, all right, when we do this, when we go to another city, like, I'm 100% starting my own company. Like, I've been doing this at this point for, again, it's like 5-6 years at this point. I was like, I need to work closer to this. Like, I'm not just trying to keep job hopping. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to work for anybody else anymore. But I didn't have the clients to do it just yet. And, so we, with a 1-month-old, my wife and I moved to Columbus, Ohio, which is still a few hours away from where I grew up, but in a town that, like I said, is growing. It's still small, but it's, I don't know, it's very close knit. And one of the things that I wanted to do was, okay, what makes Los Angeles so special, right? And really, it's just, you just have a lot of people. Though?
Is Los Angeles
exactly.
special?
I guess that's what I'm saying, is like, there's just a lot of people there. It's not really that special. So I'm like, you know what? I'm like, what I'm going to do is take some of the good stuff there and I'm going to try to bring it here. And one of those things was community. Yes, there is large communities there. Again, there's just lots of people, and they're able to have events that have hundreds of people show up on a moment's notice. And that's super cool. But I was like, well, okay, wherever I go, so it just happened to be Columbus, Ohio. I was like, all right, the first thing I do when I get here is I'm just going to meet as many people as I possibly can and become part of the community here and start networking and start building more local clients, which I was never really able to do at that point. And, it's learning a lot of good things and bad things along the way, as far as like how to handle clients, trying to build something one tiny step at a time. So fast forward again, 8 years and here we are. I now have, at the moment we have 20 people on the team. We are all remote. We all work different places in the US. And yeah, we don't work with like huge brands, but we work with, they're relatively large. They're not necessarily Fortune 500 companies all the time that we're working with. And we're able to do what I believe is cool stuff. People trust us to do things that are quite different. And that's the short version of kind of that path.
I feel like my journey was very similar. So I worked for a lot of people, a lot of industries. I actually left advertising and video production and moved into a corporate role to try to follow the money. So moved away from where I thought the limitations were in our industry. And I thought about moving to Melbourne or Sydney for that, the bigger job, work on the bigger brands, and decided against it. And that's when I went corporate. And then I sort of was involved in the marketing side of it for a good 4 or 5 years, which really amplified that sort of missing piece for me, where the connection between the video and the marketing and the strategy sort of all, align together to actually form results. And I noticed that, for instance, on your website, that's one of your big selling points. Like, I think there's a lot of people out there who essentially just make pretty stuff. And I think pretty stuff is good,
right.
But I mean, realistically, clients are paying for results, right? Based upon what we do. And that result could be views. It could be a call to action with people buying stuff. What's your approach on some of this?
That's a good observation, because one of the big things, I guess, as far as building something is, well, how am I different than anybody else? Like, why wouldn't somebody just go to somebody else? Because here's the thing. We're not the best at this stuff, right? And that's something that I've always, try to work towards. Like, yeah, I would love to be in that conversation of like, yeah, they're top 5, top 10 motion design company in the world. I'd love that. But it's not super realistic. And I'm okay with that.
Next year.
Next year. Right. So it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, I guess, there was also something that I was seeing around me where there was people leading a lot of companies that were similar, that honestly, I was like, oh, I don't understand how they're like so busy. They're a multi-million-dollar company. Like, how are they doing? Like, I do by myself, I did better work than some of these companies did. And I was like, I don't get it. And for whatever reason, it took me too long to realize, like, they were offering something more than just doing great work. Part of that is an understanding of the business that these people are operating in. If you do go into these conversations, do go into some of these strategies or some of these projects with a strategy of some kind, and show that you, one, understand business, at least at a better than basic understanding. If you understand that people are coming to you, they are spending their budget, spending their money on you for a specific result, like they have a goal of some kind. Now clients think that that the process is like, okay, I tell them exactly what I want, like we're some kind of AI engine of some kind, I guess, that they can just type in what they want and then we shoot it back to them, right?
I wish.
That's, yeah, right. And that's, so in a lot of those early conversations, you'll see people saying like, so for us, the number one email we get is like, hey, we're looking to make some kind of explainer animation for this. I'm like, that's great, but that's not really what you're trying to do. And I don't say that, but I'm like, let's go deeper. Like, why are you trying to do that exactly? And then you figure out like, oh, you know what? We're trying to boost awareness in our company. And I'm like, bam, like that's, as soon as I get to that, then I'm like, as soon as I get to somewhere that is kind of along the journey of a sales funnel of some kind, then I know I've reached some kind of real goal. So then it's like, okay, well, if you're trying to gain awareness, hey, what about doing something like this? And then this, and then we mix in a little bit of that, based on the company and their brand, just different ideas come up. But then whenever it's like, hey, so now instead of you spending this on just an explainer, we want to give you 3 pieces of this to help you gain awareness. So that's probably the biggest thing that I do at this point that probably gets us a lot farther in conversations than sometimes we probably should be.